Going through a long line of prophets, God has been addressing our ancestors in different ways for centuries. Recently, he spoke to us directly through his Son. By his Son, God created the world in the beginning, and it will all belong to the Son at the end. This Son perfectly mirrors God and is stamped with God's nature. He holds everything together by what he says, powerful words. After he finished the sacrifice for sins, the Son took his honored place high in the heavens, right alongside God, far higher than any angel in rank and rule. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
A reading from Hebrews chapter 2. It's obvious, of course, that he didn't go to all this trouble for angels. It was for the people like us, children of Abraham. That's why he had to enter into every detail of human life. Then when Abraham came before God as high priest to get rid of the people's sins, he would have already experienced it all for himself, all the pain, all the testing, and would be able to help where help was needed. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
A reading from Hebrews chapter 9, verses 11 through 15. But when the Messiah arrived, high priest of the superior things of this new covenant, he bypassed the old tent and its trappings in this created world and went straight into heaven's tent, the true holy place, once and for all. He also bypassed the sacrifices consisting of goat and calf blood, instead using his own blood as the price to set us free once and for all. If that animal blood and the other rituals of purification were effective in cleaning up certain matters of our religion and behavior, think how much more the blood of Christ cleans up our whole lives inside and out. Through the Spirit, Christ offered himself as an unblemished sacrifice, freeing us from all those dead-end efforts to make ourselves respectable, so that we can live all out for God. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
A reading from Hebrews chapter 10. So friends, we can now, without hesitation, walk right up to God into the holy place. Jesus has cleared the way by the blood of his sacrifice, acting as our priest before God. The curtain into God's presence is his body. So let's do it, full of belief, confident that we're presentable inside and out. Let's keep a firm grip on the promises that keep us going. He always keeps his word. Let's see how inventive we can be in encouraging love and helping out, not avoiding worshiping together, as some do, but spurring each other on, especially as we see the big day approaching. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
A reading from Hebrews chapter 12. Do you see what this means? All these pioneers who blazed the way, all these veterans cheering us on? It means we'd better get on with it. Strip down, start running, and never quit. So no extra spiritual fat, no parasitic sins. Keep your eyes on Jesus, who both began and finished this race we're in. Study how he did it, because he never lost sight of where he was headed, the exhilarating finish in and with God. He could put up with anything along the way, cross, shame, whatever. And now he's there, in the place of honor, right alongside God. When you find yourselves flagging in your faith, go over that story again, item by item, that long litany of hostility he plowed through. That will shoot adrenaline into your souls. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
The light shines in the darkness,
and the darkness has not overcome it.
An angel went from God to a town called Nazareth, to a woman whose name was Mary. The angel said to her, "Rejoice, O highly favored, for God is with you. You shall bear a child, and his name shall be Jesus, the chosen one of God Most High." And Mary said, "I am a servant of my God. I live to do your will."
My soul proclaims your greatness, O God, and my spirit rejoices in you. You have looked with love on your servant here, and blessed me all my life through. Great and mighty are you, O Holy One. Strong is your kindness evermore. How you favor the weak and lowly one, humbling the proud of heart. You have cast the mighty down from their thrones, and uplifted the humble of heart. You have filled the hungry with wondrous things, and left the wealthy no part. Great and mighty are you, O faithful one. Strong is your justice, strong your love. As you promised to Sarah and Abraham, kindness forevermore.
My soul proclaims your greatness, O God, and my spirit rejoices in you. You have looked with love
On your servant here, and blessed me all my life through. All right, well, as they're getting ready to come up here to do some teaching on the New Testament. Last week we talked about the Old Testament. And do you remember, Fink students of all ages right now, how you can remember how many books there are in the Old Testament? Do you remember that? No, okay. Huh?
3 letters.
There's 3 letters in Old, and how many in Testament? 9, and you put the 3 next to the 9, and you've got? Thank you. And let me help you remember how many books of the New Testament there are. How many letters is there in the word new? 3. How many letters are there in the word testament? 9. 3 times 9. There are 20. Who said 26? There are 27 books in the New Testament. So that was just, trivia for you this evening. But it's a way to remember it anyways. You won't forget that now. Will you? All right. New Testaments.
think I just had a serious systems crash in memory. Isn't there some kind of pill you can take to help with that?
I think I remember reading...
Yeah, a test-taking memory pill. I think it comes in mint flavor.
Mint? You're not talking about that sacred mint again, are you?
Sacred mint? Don't be ridiculous. This is for tests. Yeah. I think this one is called the New Testament.
You're thinking of the New Testament, the second part of the Bible.
No, this is for tests. Testaments.
The New Testament is in the Bible. It's not a pill for tests, it's a...
Oh, yeah? Why do they call it a testament, then?
Testament means covenant.
Yeah? Well, what covenant is this New Testament about?
It's the covenant between God and the people where God forgives sins through Christ. In the Old Testament, they were forgiven by sacrifices. Now, in this new agreement, Jesus takes the punishment in our place.
I wish he'd take this test in my place.
It's all clear in the Gospels.
Gospels? It's a gospel.
The Gospel is the good news about Jesus. It comes from the Old English word, God's spell.
Spell? That's what I need this test bill for. Spelling test.
God's spell. God's special magic that sets the world free.
And that magic is?
God became human through Jesus. That's the magic. Christ's death and resurrection. That's the spell that sets us free from sin. The first 4 books in the New Testament are stories about the life of Jesus, so they're called the Gospels.
I know. Matthew, Mark, Luke.
And John. You got it.
Why 4 accounts? Why didn't they just get together and write one good one? Would have been easier to study for the test if you only had to read one.
Each wrote the story of Jesus as he saw it, and each wrote to a particular audience. For instance, Matthew wrote to the Jewish community, so he was more careful to show how Jesus was the Messiah they had been waiting for. He starts with Jesus' family tree, going all the way back to King David, to Abraham, to Adam.
Matthew. What about Mark?
In the second book in the New Testament, there's Mark. His story was the first account actually written down and preserved. His is also shorter than the others and more to the point.
Shorter? My kind of writer. Easier to study that way. What about Luke?
Luke was a doctor and a scholar. He wanted to be absolutely sure people knew the times and places for everything that happened. That way it wouldn't be seen as a once-upon-a-time story. People of his day could check it out. Luke also wrote the first book that comes after the Gospels. This book was about the Acts of the Apostles.
What did he call it?
The Acts of the Apostles.
Creative title. And John?
John was the mystic, the dreamer. His book is more poetic. It picks up more on the mystical Jesus.
So, let me get this straight. 4 writers each wrote their own accounts of Jesus, and that's the New Testament?
Their writings are the first 4 books in the New Testament. We call them Gospels because they talk about God's spell that sets the world free.
Then comes Luke's Acts?
Right. Then a whole bunch of letters written by Paul to churches he started all over the Mediterranean.
The Bible has letters in it? Oh, there's the letter B.
For example, Paul's letter to the church in Rome is called Romans.
Another creative title.
And Paul's letter to the church at Corinth is Corinthians. And to the Christians in Ephesus, he wrote Ephesians. And then there's the Philippians.
And his letter to the town of Deerwood is called the Deerwoodians. So Paul wrote the rest?
No. James wrote the book of James. Peter wrote Peter. John wrote...
More creative titles.
And after all these Gospels and letters comes a very mysterious book written by John when he was a prisoner exiled in the island of Patmos.
Let me guess. Patmosians?
No. It's the Revelation to John. It's a vision of the end of the world filled with angels and dragons and demons and moons turned to blood and cosmic battles. In it, God smashes evil and sets up a new heaven and new earth.
That's all in the New Testament?
It was written in a time when the old world was coming apart. It was the end of the world as they knew it. It tells the Christians under persecutions to hold on and have hope. God will finally make things right. And it all ends with the promise that Jesus will come again.
Christ is coming again? I hope Jesus comes back soon, really soon.
Why's that?
Then I won't have to study for my test.
And if he doesn't come back before the test?
Then I better find myself some of those pills that help you study. What are they called again?
Testaments?
Yeah, New Testaments. I've heard of those before, haven't you?
Yeah. They sell them right in the store, next to the sacraments.
So the New Testament, lots of different things in the New Testament. Can you advance the slide one for me, please? There's lots of different types of writing in the New Testament. As you see on the screen, it starts out with some history books. So you go to the library, you get to the shelf of history books. And I'd break it down even further. You've got the Gospels, which if you want to use more street language, those are simply biographies of Jesus. Which one's true? Well, how many biographies of Abraham Lincoln do you think there are? I don't have the answer. That's a rhetorical question. Which one's true? Well, they probably all are, but they're probably all written from a little different perspective, as we heard in the skit. So we've got biographies, or Gospels, or God's spell. We've got some more history called Acts. So we've got Jesus, and then the Acts of the Apostles. I would rename it, probably. Acts of the Holy Spirit working through the apostles. That title gets a little bit long, but it's all about this explosion of the Jesus way. The explosion of people following Jesus. Numbers just grew. So we've got some history. And then as the church got bigger, and when I say the church, many churches, as the church spread out from Palestine or Israel or Jerusalem or whatever name you want to give the area, as it spread out, and were founded by, a lot of them, by this guy by the name of Paul. Saul turned Paul. Paul would start a church here, and then he'd move on and start a church here, and then he'd hear some gossiping going on back here. And so he wrote him a letter and said, all right, you're followers of Jesus. Followers of Jesus don't act in that way, but followers in Jesus are to live transformed lives by Jesus' presence in their life. It's to change things. So start living that new life. And then he'd go on and found a church over here, and that, doggone it, these guys over here again are doing something else. He had to write a letter to them, and them too, just for good measure. And that's how we got all these letters. And then a bunch of other people. So we got Paul's letters. Now, here's another little tidbit trivia. If you look at Paul's letters, they're not organized chronologically, like which one was written first and which one was written second. They're organized by size. The big ones come first. Romans is big, so that one came first. 1st and 2nd Corinthians, those are big books too. And then we get a bunch of littler ones. Then you get to the general letters, which are letters that Paul didn't write, someone else did, to like all them churches. That wasn't very good English, by the way. All of those churches that he had founded, or that were out there. Not that Paul had founded necessarily, but that were out there. The Deerwoodians might have read it. And then that last one, the Apocalypse, or the Revelation to John. That book of really weird stuff, like Star Wars stuff. Good versus evil. The cosmic stuff going on. In the actual Think class, if we're talking about Revelation, I do show a clip from Star Wars. Because you've got two things going on. Down on the planet, I can't remember what planet it was, there's this battle going on, good guys, bad guys. And then up in the heavens, so to speak, you got the starships having their battles, good versus evil. And that's kind of what's going on in the book of Revelation. The evil and the struggle that we experience down here, so to speak, if heaven's up, and heaven's not up, but just bear with me. The good and evil and the struggles that we're going on here are also taking place cosmically. Kind of weird. And that book was written to give us hope. That in the end, God wins. Christ wins. And all who belong to Christ win. So be comforted and have hope now. Okay, so we got this whole New Testament thing, right? It's all about Jesus and the Jesus way. The more important question now is, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with this Jesus guy who lived and died and rose again? What are you going to do about this abundant life that he says is available to you and to me in and through him? What are you going to do? And those letters, if you allow Jesus to transform your life, you look at those letters and they say it should make a difference in your day-to-day living. It should. So what's it going to be? Your way or Jesus' way? And I can tell you which one leads to the abundant life. The New Testament. Read it. Digest it. And then ask yourself the question, now what? Or when I lived in Germany, they would say, na und? Kind of sounds a little arrogant. Na und? So what? Now what? It's a way of life. True abundant life. A meaningful life. For you and for me. Let's stand and join in singing a hymn. I think that's next.